Association if you want information from the Angus people as well. We'll go back to the telephones. Mike has been holding from Florida, and we thank you for calling. Mike, you're up next.
How y'all doing?
Doing great. Thanks for the call.
We got a small herd, 40 head of brood cows, registered Angus, and we wean our calves at 6 months. They're weaning about 500. We keep them weaned, and we vaccinate them and everything. But how does small producers recoup the cost of weaning them and vaccinating them? The order buyers down here just don't want to pay for quality cattle. How can small producers recoup some of the cost of doing that?
Larry, you kind of alluded to that a little bit about what's going on in the inefficiencies out there. It's Mike's.
Well, that's a great question, and that is a tremendous challenge in the industry, is that you do a lot of these practices, you do things right, you really help build a resume for that calf, and then how do I get paid for it? There's a variety of things that one could look at. In your part of the country, a lot of pooling of cattle is starting to occur to create a little more economic impact. Feedlots like to buy a little bigger drafts of cattle, so they have common management strategies on these calves at weaning time, pull together and take advantage of kind of a cooperative marketing type approach. Any of those type of things that you can do, tremendously valuable to recoup the dollars that you put into doing things right. That's one example. In our case, we'd certainly recommend the use of the Angus source tag. If you're using Angus genetics that you alluded to, we find that the Angus source calves do bring a premium in markets throughout the country. I hope that's the case in your part of the country, but most parts of the country, they are bringing a premium. Another thing that some are looking at is the agent source verification. It continues to bring some dollars back into the cow-calf industry. You kind of have to look at it in your particular region. What seems to be working? What is a way that I can recoup these dollars? Because that's really a value-added type program if I can find ways to get that done.
You know, Mark, we're talking about a weaning program, but again, as we talk about that year-round nutrition, if we can plan now for our winter feeding and get our calves born in a little tighter, what if we could get all our calves born in 21 days? It would make it a lot easier handling on the vaccination
Absolutely.
program. What do you do with that calf that's 45 or 60 days behind the rest of them? It really doesn't. You were talking about the size of the drafts. You know, that just makes a lot of difference. I mean, if I can, if we got 40 head, if I can get that entire draft to be 20 steers, it's going to bring more money than 10. And so those are some of the things that they could do to increase that value by having more of them in that group.
Right. Go ahead.
And
yes.
Just add again, Mark. It's a very common question we get when out working in the field. In particular, I would say in the Southeast and where you're from, that producers, and typically are a little on the a number of smaller producers that but as Larry said, where we can see, you have a value added product and you can't market it as a commodity. And so think about how can you employ some value added marketing, and whether that's maybe even working with your auction market. A lot of the auction markets are now offering some special sales. Think about that buyer of that calf. Unfortunately, by the time you break off your steers and your heifers and you break them by weights, a buyer sitting in that sale barn, if he doesn't have some other calves to put with that, is not going to be able to pay that premium or pay what the value that's really in that calf. So think about how you might be able to work with some other producers, maybe get on a similar program, similar calving time, maybe even, again, we've seen some commercial producers that working on similar genetics that end up with almost half sibs of all when they put their calves together. Boy, they can market like they can really take advantage of the value that they've put in that set of calves, and it really shows up in the paycheck.